Watching Good Morning Namibia on NBC. Now, Namibia is gearing up for the regional and local authority elections and pivotal moment for the citizens to shape leadership at local and regional levels. Now, with 25 approved political parties and 68 independent candidates contesting these elections, understanding the premises and policy directions of each contender is key for informed voting. Joining us this morning, to talk to us about what we can expect in terms of of course, what we have seen already as far as the candidature and more is Rui Tyitende, a seasoned political analyst who will provide insights into the manifestos of the candidates and political parties, also helping Namibians unpack what these pledges mean for their communities and the nation at large. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure.
Good morning, John, and good morning to the viewers.
Absolute pleasure. I think it's, a couple of weeks before, of course, Namibia goes to the polls for the regional council and local authority elections. But to start off our conversations, could you give us an overview of the landscape, political landscape, as far as the upcoming regional and local authority elections? What is the environment looking like in terms of where we are headed for these elections?
Well, John, we just emerged from the Presidential and National Assembly elections of 2024.
That's right.
And back then there was a lot of political tensions in a more democratic way, if I can put it that way. Mm-hmm. People were excited about the prospects of voting for the first time, especially young people. And we've also witnessed the emergence of a sort of culture that speaks to holding government leaders accountable in the event that they do not deliver on the material conditions that they've made to the Namibian populace. But as with regional and local authority elections, despite the fact that they are more close to people on the ground, there tends to be more voter apathy. People don't show up in those elections. And the reason is of our election calendar as well. We just came from an election. Now people have to go and stand in the queue again. Mm-hmm. And people were actually frustrated about last year's elections, no ballot papers at certain polling stations and things like that. Yeah. But more importantly, we should look at the policy alternatives that these representatives would want to proffer to the Namibian people. What is it that they are going to do that will improve the material conditions of people, their way of life, their immediate living environment? And we need to ask the salient questions of, I have voted for this particular candidate or this political party previously. How has my life transformed? Has it improved or not? And what are the options that are available to me there in the political market? I think we need to move away from a scenario or a situation where we tend to support political parties or political candidates like a football team. If you are Manchester United, you remain loyal to Manchester United, even though they continuously lose, or if it's Arsenal, thinking that the prospects will change. You shift your loyalty based on what's happening on the ground, not on grand illusions.
Mm-hmm. And if you look at if you just, like you just mentioned, of course, we just came from elections in 2024. And if you look at what has been done thus far, as of when the elections that just ended to now, would you say there is perhaps any changes that happen in terms of the public or the communities that, of course, have voted for these candidates in terms of service delivery, and how could that affect what actually is going to go forward now, especially now that we're heading into the regional and local authority elections?
Well, look, 2020 would be an important yardstick to use. We have seen the governing party being dislodged from the city of Windhoek. You look at Irongo region, the governing party has lost tremendous support there. So the people that voted for the opposition in the 2020 elections will say, you know what, I have voted for this party in 2020. They promised us houses. They promised us improved service delivery. Mm-hmm. They promised us that the cost of utilities, water, and electricity will go down. We are now in 2025. What does it look like? Or was it just promises again? So that's a very important yardstick that they ought to utilize. And at the same time, the governing party is also trying very strongly to regain that support that they've lost in the 2019 as well as the 2024 elections. Now, the key question is this. To what extent will people be loyal to a particular political party that has not been able to deliver. If your living conditions have not improved, do you remain with that political party out of disillusionment, or do you look at other political parties on the scene? And knowing Namibian politics is that, to a large extent, people tend to vote on the basis of loyalty and not because of their socio-economic conditions. But young people in particular, if they do show up in the polls, I think the prospects for the various political parties would alter fundamentally.
Very well. Let's talk about what we know now, which is, of course, 25 approved political parties and 68 independent candidates. How do you assess, the diversity of options that Namibians actually have available, of course, for Namibian voters this year?
Well, Namibian voters, the average Namibian voter is spoiled for choice because the political scene is crowded with political parties, despite the fact that we're such a small country, a small democracy. The political field or the environment is crowded. So many options. But the question is, what is the caliber or the quality of these alternatives or options that are available to the Namibian public? You need to remember that most of the opposition parties that behave or act like alternatives to SWAPO actually emerged from SWAPO. You can look at the biggest one now, IPC, an offshoot of SWAPO. You look at LPM, an offshoot of SWAPO. You look at the affirmative repositioning movement, they are also an offshoot coming from SWAPO. So if you are saying that Namibians are spoiled for choice, what is this choice exactly and what does it look like? And more importantly, from a policy perspective or from a political ideology perspective, what alternatives are they offering? And people will look at what they have done in the regions that they govern. They look at Hardap and Karas, where LPM dominates. They will look at Irongo, where IPC dominates. And they look at what was happening when SWAPO was in charge. Have the lives of the people improved? And that will be a very important indicator or yardstick to utilize as a voter to make an informed decision in the upcoming elections.
And it's all up to the manifesto, of course, now that we've seen parties already, some of them launching already. And focusing on that, what are some of the key promises that you've seen, some political parties or independent candidates make as far as policy priorities that stand out across major political parties that have already made their promises to their communities?
Well, look, most political parties have not even launched their manifestos for local and regional authority elections. Some would maybe just copy and paste what they've promised in the national elections, but the issues are fundamentally different. At grassroots level, people are more concerned about affordability for water and electricity, fixing of potholes, jobs in their local constituents. So it's more grassroots based. And if it were up to political parties, they wouldn't even have manifestos because they do not write these manifestos themselves. They come to people like us to write these manifestos without actually understanding what informed those manifestos. Now, if you have to ask them, what does your party stand for and how does it differ from party B? They will just say, no, we will improve, but they will not tell you exactly what it is that they are going to do that is fundamentally different from the next political party. And that is the problem in our politics generally, John, is that we do not have standards in our politics. Politicians, regional and local authority councillors, most of them actually enter politics for job prospects, not because they want to be servants of the people, and that needs to change. It's high time that our lawmakers consider having a basic requirement for entrance into politics, a diploma or a degree at local authority level. And this is why local authority councillors and regional councillors deal with complex public policy issues, policy formulation, agenda setting, interpreting a budget, dealing with officials that are educated, they have master's degrees. Now, if you have never heard of the word budget in your entire life, how are you going to analyze and interpret a budget? If you've never heard of concepts like analysis, policy formulation, agenda setting, those are sophisticated concepts, and having a diploma or a degree, whether it's in law, in politics or economics, should be the bare minimum for you to enter the political fold. Because now we have seen people from everywhere, you know, rejects of society, people that are functionally illiterate, using politics as a stepstone to enter the job market. And that shouldn't be the case at all.
Yeah. And how do we hold then those political parties accountable to making those choices to actually, you know, push up what you've called now, you know, street rejects? You know, how do we hold them accountable to actually, you know, also push the right people who are educated, like you mentioned, and of course, that are right and fit for the positions that, of course, or rather the leadership positions that we're hoping them to, of course, uphold?
Well, look, our entire political system needs to be transformed for the better. And I'm not only talking about regional and local authority elections. I'm also talking about members of the National Assembly as well as members of the National Council. Of course, they will be part and parcel of the upcoming elections. In certain countries, serious democracies, there are minimum standards. You know, countries like Ireland. For you to participate in politics, you need to have grade 12 or you need to have a degree. Other countries actually ask for a master's degree for enter politics. That's how serious they are about issues that governs society. We need to change the laws. The minimum entrance for politics should be set high because people deal with questions about life and death. For example, where will a clinic be constructed? Where will a school be constructed? Roads, access to pivotal healthcare, access to primary education. Those are very important socio-economic decisions that cannot be left to chance, that cannot be left to people that look at politics as an avenue to ascend to a job, for example. And our entire political setup, people now believe for you to become rich in Namibia, you need to enter politics and you need to join a particular political party. And that needs to change. If we don't do that, we will keep on going in this vicious cycle of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. It's because we are being governed by people that don't have the interests of Namibians at heart.
Very well. Let's talk about the young people, of course, are the big chunk of the population. As we head into this population, or rather comparing to the National Assembly and presidential elections from 2024, what change do you see happening now? Do we see any mindset change or any perhaps, you know, empathy change that we're also expecting as they go into the regional and local authority elections? And perhaps what's your advice to them, you know, as they go out to make their decisions as well?
Well, you know, Chino Achebes is saying that the more things change, the more they tend to stay the same. Voter apathy, especially amongst the youth, especially for the upcoming elections, I think it will be low compared to the national elections of last year, because regional and local authority elections, even though it's at grassroots level, some of those young people stay in Windhoek now. They cannot identify or relate with these political parties or candidates. But at the national level, they just knew that they wanted an alternative. And what was that alternative for them? Anything but the governing party. But the law is very clear in terms of who you can vote for in regional and local authority elections. You must have presided in a particular constituency for a particular duration. I think it's 1 year. Now, people tend to move around for employment opportunities, for studying and things like that. But my overall message to people is this. If you fail to participate in the political process, if you say that things will not change no matter how I vote, someone has already made that decision for you, and you will be ultimately affected by that. And more importantly, if you are not at the dinner table where decisions are being made, then you are on the menu.
Very well. Rui, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Always a pleasure to hear your expert knowledge on this. Of course, I hope to discuss this matter, of course, as we get to the close date of the regional council and local authority elections.
You're most welcome.
Absolutely. Rui Tyitende is a seasoned political analyst, my apologies, was, of course, talking to us about the upcoming regional council and the local authority elections, of course, sharing his thoughts on that. And we have now also learned that the ECN has also reported yesterday that the ballot papers have, of course, arrived yesterday. And, of course, just seeing the progress being made as early as possible to, of course, make sure that all things are set for the upcoming regional council and local authority elections.